up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith, and welcome to the Nerdy Narrative. On this channel, I like to talk to you about all sorts of bookish related things, whether it be in the science fiction category, fantasy, horror, manga, comics, nonfiction, literary fiction, classics, poetry, short stories. If there's a genre that I haven't mentioned that you love, hit me up with some of your favorite recommendations for those genres down below and we'll just get those in there too. Why not? So for today's episode of fun, I have for you my April wrap up. I'm just going to briefly recap all of the things that I read in the month of April and what star rating I gave it. I use the Goodreads 5-star program. It's just easier for me to keep up with one rating program and just go with it. To quickly tell you what my stars mean: 1 star, I didn't like it. 2 stars, I liked something about it. 3 stars, I really liked it. I saw something amazing in either the story or the author, a lot of potential, but there was just something that kept me from bringing it higher. 4 stars, I loved it. 5 stars, stellar. There was no complaints. I loved everything, and that's probably an auto-buy author for me. Normally, I start with the first book that I finish and go to the last book, but I'm going to start with what I read on my Kindle, because if I don't, I will forget them. I do it almost every single month, and I don't want to leave my Kindle babies out. The book that I read on my Kindle this month, I read the e-arc for City of Blood, which is book 5 in the Nightmare Land Chronicles by Daniel Barnett. I gave City of Blood 5 stars. What I love most about City of Blood is I finally got some answers and one really fantastic reveal. I know there's a lot of you that are working your way through the Nightmare Land Chronicles. When this one is available, I need you guys to be ready on release day. I need you to get it on your Kindle Unlimited subscription, wherever, however you choose to read this book. And I'm just gonna need you to just get it done. I need you to read this book, and then I need to talk to you about it because it is amazing. I really just need to celebrate some of the arcs in this story of what happened in them. 5 stars. The Nightmare Land Chronicles is just amazing. Next, let's go ahead and get to my Audible book. I listened to Breach of Peace by Daniel Green, and this one I gave 3 stars. I liked it, and I saw amazing potential in both where the story could go and what can be done with it, and just how much could be built on it. Being Daniel's debut novella, I also saw his ability as a writer. He's got some amazing potential, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do in the next one. He did tweet out some informal ideas of what's going to happen in the next one. I'm really looking forward to those. I'm very excited about where he's going to take this story in the next one. But this one for me was a 3-star read, and I would not classify it as a fantasy. I would classify it as a horror. And I think if people go into it looking at it from that perspective, they might get more enjoyment out of it. I stand by what I said in my review, which I'll link up here in the cards for you. I said that I felt a lot of people didn't like it because they were expecting epic fantasy, and it was not fantasy to me at all. It was horror, and I feel like if they go in expecting horror, they're gonna like it a lot better. It's just like you go to a restaurant and you order a Coke. The waitstaff puts down a dark colored cola in front of you. You take a huge swig expecting Coke, and it's Diet Coke. Ugh. You've done it. You know you've all done it. You know what I'm talking about. And I think because people were expecting this epic fantasy and got something different, it threw them off, and they thought that they didn't like it, or they didn't like Daniel's writing. So I stand by what I said, guys. Next up, let's talk about my picture book that I read for the month of April. I read the creator-owned comic series Chew by John Layman and Rob Guillory. I did get that series from my library, and I had to return them last weekend, so I don't have them to show you, but I absolutely loved this comic series. I would classify it as a crime-fighting series. It was really hilarious. It had a lot of humor in it, but it's on the darker side of humor. So I would most definitely say check this one out from your library like I did. Give a few issues a try and make sure that your humor lines up with it, because if you don't find their type of humor funny, you definitely won't enjoy the series. But I did. It was based on the premise that bird flu wiped out millions of people worldwide, and so chicken became illegal, and you still had people that were like trying to like deal in eggs on the side and serve black market chicken in these like underground restaurants that you had to be invited to and things of that nature. Plus, the superpowers in the series was all food based. I thought it was very creative, very funny, lots of fun things going on in many different ways. You have your story, but you also have the things that are just hiding in the background. I absolutely loved it. I kind of really felt like the whole series, the way the artist was drawing and hiding little Easter eggs of pop culture in the background, it's kind of like when you used to go to the doctor's office and they had those highlights books, and on the back you would like find all the pictures. I kind of felt like I was treating the issues like that. Super fun read. I really enjoyed it. The series as a whole, I gave a 5 to. I wasn't happy with the ending. I felt it could have been better, and I wouldn't have chosen the ending that they chose. The storyline that they considered their main storyline, I didn't feel the same. I thought a minor storyline that ended in issue 10 was the better, stronger one. But that is just a personal preference, completely subjective, but definitely 5-star rating. So the first book I completed in the month of April, I finished right on the first day of April. That's Golden Sun, which is book 2 in the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown. I gave this one 4 stars. I think it was just a little too busy and amped up. I loved the book. Don't get me wrong. I loved the book. But I just felt it moved too fast. I could not recover or absorb or even comprehend things that were happening before the next big thing that were happening. And it was all big things. This is a Michael Bay movie in book form. It was crazy good, but stuff was happening everywhere. And in fact, this is the first book that I've read in a long time that I did not have the rating immediately in my mind, either before I finished or right when I finished. I had to think about it a few days, and I had to talk about it with several of my friends and just work through all of the things that happened. And I think that's because of the way he wrote it. He didn't give me any time to breathe and just work through what had happened before the next thing was happening. So I think it just took a couple of days of me mulling everything over and just understanding what I read, or at least interpreting what I think the author was trying to do with certain things. So 4 is still great though. I 100%, and I bet on a reread I might feel differently. The next book I completed was the one that was actually chosen by my patron Evie for me to read and review it for the month of April. I did review it, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. I'll put the link up in the cards above. I love this book, Motherless Brooklyn by Jonathan Lethem. I gave it 5 stars. I loved everything about this book. It was hilarious. It had fantastic character development. It holds so much reread capability. I can't even begin to tell you. This is one that I will use in many years to come as far as just rereading for enjoyment. If I need help being pulled out of a reading slump, this one, I just absolutely enjoyed it. And I really loved the audiobook. Frank Muller narrated this one. Just perfect. Guys, I'm laughing because I'm looking at the stack of the rest of the books that I read, and they're all 5-star reads. But I loved them all. They were all so good. Abby's gonna come for me. She's gonna do her next 5-star strumpet video about me, but I can defend all of these books being 5-star reads. I really can. But the next one I finished is Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. This book is one that it's like wine. The more you think about it and just soak up what you read and go back through and flip through and just hit certain passages again, the better it gets, the more meaning it has. I was part of a live stream where we discussed this book with the Codex Cantina and Chrissy Lewis. I will have that in the cards. I will also have it in the description box down below. But woo, this book was so good. So good. And my subjective opinion, Kurt Vonnegut was finally able, after years and years, to put into writing what happened to him at the bombing of Dresden in World War II when he served. And I think, in my opinion, that what he was trying to do is shine a light on what war really was, what these servicemen and women actually saw and experienced, without putting a bow on it, without glorifying it or embellishing it. Because I do feel that there was a lot of glory put on the war and serving and hopes of getting people to join up. I do feel that that was the way war was marketed. And Kurt Vonnegut just wanted people to know the truth of what it was. And I just really appreciated that. That took some big cojones, especially because when this sucker came out, what was happening? The Vietnam War. Again, more information on it. Definitely hit that live stream up and listen to what we all had to say about it. It was a fantastic discussion. The next book I completed in the month of April, that was a 5-star read for me. The Mask of Mirrors by the author team M.A. Carrick. This book was so good. This book was so good. It's one of those that you finish reading it and you want to immediately reread it. And the second book, we are so lucky, guys. The second book is going to be out this year. I will 100% reread this book. Yeah, it's thick. It's thick. I will reread this book before the second one comes out. I loved it. The world was so full. It was so full of just mystery. We had magic. We had political maneuverings and intrigue. We had a huge plot that was a big con that was being worked on several of the characters involved. Like all the characters, really. I loved it. I loved it. I loved the world. I loved the society. And the society was a bit complex, but I loved it. They do a really good job developing it. They explain it well. They have their own different way of telling times and days. I didn't understand it. I never caught on to that. I don't know that we were supposed to. I just think that was a little bit of just a nuance that they added in to just make it different. And it was done so well. But gosh, it was phenomenal. I loved every minute I spent in this book. It was such an enjoyable read. I highly recommend it. If you love adult fantasy, oh my goodness. I would definitely call it fluffy adult fantasy, but I love me some fluff, as it turns out. And then my second science fiction read of the month was another 5-star read, The Dark That Dwells by Matt Dickman and Ryan Roddy. This is my self-published piece that I read for the month of April. Absolutely enjoyed it. It is such a great story. I was so excited when Shelf Published In picked it for their indie read of the month for the month of May, because I've been over in the channels, and as people are reading it, I am just soaking up all of their comments, all of the joy, the things that they're loving are the same things that I fell in love with. So if you have picked this book up but you haven't started reading it and you want to buddy read it, look in the description box for the link to the Shelf Published In Discord and come by and join us over there. This one is another one that holds lots of reread capability for me. I need to reread it. There were so many things that I enjoyed that I want to go back and reread and just study, because there are some beautiful, beautiful equipment, weapons, technology, the way they travel space, the beings that exist, just the weaponry. It's just described so beautifully. I want to go back through and just really solidify the pictures in my mind of all of these things. It's just really an enjoyable place to be. It's the same as the reason why I rewatch Firefly and Star Wars and The Expanse and Battlestar Galactica over and over. I just love this universe, this galaxy that this story takes place in, and I cannot wait for the second book in the series. Next, and then my next 5-star read is in the horror category, and this is The Least of My Scars by Stephen Graham Jones. This book scared the stuffing out of me. We are in the mind of a serial killer, and he is living large. Circumstances lead him to basically being set up in his own apartment. He never has to leave. His benefactor, his employer, sends people to this guy's apartment for him to kill them. Somebody knocks on his door, he knows what's expected. But what makes this so scary is we're in his mind. We have a front row seat to what he's thinking, how he seems so very rational with what he's thinking and how he plans these things. And he walks you through the selection process for when he first got his start and things of that nature. And I can't tell you more than that because it really would give you too many clues for you to figure out the ending. And Stephen Graham Jones is a master of starting a book one way, going in one direction, and completely flipping it on its head and taking you somewhere completely different. He's done it to me 3 times in a row. I am in love with this author. And my next 5-star read, I was loving some science fiction in the month of April, you guys. But book 3 of the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown, Morning Star. This sucker was 5 stars. This series is a read-along that is taking place over on the Library of Alexandria's Discord. I told them all, chapter 1, this is a 5-star read for me. And they're like, chapter 1 though? And I'm like, yes, I knew it and I was right. The pacing in this one was perfect. There were still big things happening, but they were spaced out. But things just happen on a, I guess, longer timeline. So I did have space to absorb what I was reading, reconcile what happened before moving into the next one. I cried 2 times. One was just due to intense sadness, and the other was just happiness. But I can't wait to see what happens in Iron Gold. That's a different trilogy that begins in the Red Rising series. I think it takes place 10 years after the ending of this one. Oh gosh, I cannot wait to see where this story is going to go from here. This was a phenomenal series. I am so glad Alan hosted this on his Discord because there's no telling when I would have picked this up. I have just really enjoyed the story. I've really loved reading it with my friends. Definitely highly recommend this as a science fiction series. Next up was my 5-star thriller for the month of April, The Atlantis Jean by A.G. Riddle. And this is actually part of a trilogy. I have to read those other 2 books. I buddy read this with Michael Nip. He's going straight on into the second book this month, and I am just dying to hear what he thinks about it. But this sucker, the action begins on page 1, and it doesn't end until the last page. I flew through this book. I want to say Michael and I read it in 3 days. I got started on it and I flew through it, and I was so excited about it and telling him about it that he got started in it. And then once we got started, we couldn't stop. It is so fast paced. It's so addicting. It's so good. I mean, this is probably one of the fastest 500-page reads I've had all year. Loved it. I will tell you, if you are sensitive to the pandemic that we're currently experiencing, do not read this. This is about a very similar pandemic where the symptoms are flu-like and all of that. Lots of death due to it, and just don't read it. Don't read it. If that is something that affects you adversely, don't read it. This was my patron pick for me to read in the month of April, and once again, I've got another favorite author, another auto by author, another author I want to read all their works. My patrons are knocking it out of the park this year. Every month, a book has been chosen for me by an author I'd never read before, and what's happened? I've loved the author, I've loved the book, and I want to read everything they ever wrote. This could be a problem. And finally, guys, finally, we're to the last book that I read of the month of April, which I read 12. That's a pretty good chunk of books. But The Last Argument of Kings, book 3 in the First Law trilogy, I absolutely love this book. This is described as grimdark fantasy, and if all grimdark fantasy is like this, I will love it. I gave this one 5 stars. This I had a live stream for on my channel. Link will be in the cards and in the description. But the read along that was hosted by Steve Talks About Books and Stuff and Yolene Reads came to a close, and we had a live stream on my channel where we talked about The Last Argument of Kings, and then we talked about the First Law trilogy as a whole. So definitely check that out if you wanted to hear what all of us thought. It was all of our first time reading it, except on the last live stream we had Johanna with us, who had read it previously, and she came and chatted along with us. But guys, this book was amazing. It combined the character work that I fell in love with and the blade itself with the plot lines that we were introduced to in the second book, and it just harmonized in a fantastic ending to this trilogy. I absolutely love this series. I'm already planning to read 2 of the standalones from the First Law world this next month. I can't wait. I love this world. I love this world. I love these characters. Joe Abercrombie can write some dang characters, y'all. And they're gray. They're gray. Like, what I learned in The Last Argument of Kings is that all of these characters were kind of bad people. Or they weren't, not all of them were bad. Some of them could be better people. They might just be greedy or conceited or selfish. But we did have some murderers and torturers and all that. But you just can't help but enjoy reading about them. And the really cool thing about all of these characters and the many different point of views is the ability of Joe Abercrombie to write a book with multiple POVs where I wasn't mad when he switched point of views, and I love spending time with all the characters. Like, the first time I ever read a book like that was George R.R. Martin when he started A Song of Ice and Fire. That book, the first book in that series was the first time I'd ever read one where we had a different character with every chapter. And there were characters I loved and I didn't want to leave, and I would get mad when I would get to the next chapter and switch to a different character. There were those that I hated. But with these, I loved them. And he did such a great balance of when to switch those point of views that I was never upset to leave one behind for the other. I love spending time with all of them. That is just... that's fantastic. And that was the last book that I finished in the month of April. I had a freaking awesome reading month. Just amazing. And these are not even all books that I chose for myself. Some were chosen by other people. Some were read-alongs that I jumped into because my friends were doing it. And they still turned out to be phenomenal reads. I'm just... my little bookish heart is just full. Just full. It was a wonderful, wonderful month. And May is already starting out very strong. So I am looking forward to having another fun-filled month of reading. Guys, what did you think about my ratings for any of these books that you've read? Have you read any of them that you disagree with my rating and you have a different one? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's talk about it. I will not lie to you. My ratings are really kind of emotionally based, and I might have missed something. I get excited. You are also welcome to come join me over on the Nerdy Narrative Discord. Link is in the description down below. We are always talking about some books over there. Guys, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you spending a little bit of your morning with me. I hope your day has gotten off to a good start. I hope the rest of your day is absolutely amazing. Y'all take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.